Today, I am going to be talking about generosity, which is the first paramita. And the paramitas start with generosity because the other five are based on generosity. To begin with generosity, we start by not being dominated by the material world, by being a little less attached to the material world. Even a little bit can make a significant difference. And this is the beginning of the spiritual journey. Along with that, we have the seed of compassion in our minds. And generosity has a lot to do with compassion. Compassion both for ourselves and for others. And generosity has a lot to do with benefiting others, but also benefiting ourselves. The two are very closely interrelated. So the seed of compassion that we have in our mind, like any other seed, it has to be nurtured. One way to nurture compassion is to reflect on it. So to reflect on compassion, to direct our minds to compassion. Another way to nurture it is to take joy in compassion. Compassion, again, is wanting beings to be free of suffering. And we, of course, want to be free of suffering. When we understand that, we really begin to understand that other people also suffer and want to avoid suffering. The third way to nurture it is to be patient and persistent, not just every now and then. Don't expect miracles, so be patient. A lot of times we misinterpret patience to mean, yeah, I don't have to do that now. I can be lazy. But here it's being persistent, but then being patient about the progress that we make. So if we take proper care of that seed of compassion, it will ripen. And if we do not take proper care of it, it will either not ripen or will ripen in an unhealthy way. To continue on this train of thought is that bodhisattvas need to have a healthy relationship, a positive relationship with others. And the paramitas are about the bodhisattva path, developing a healthy relationship with others. And along with that, developing a healthy relationship with ourselves. Generosity brings happiness and satisfaction to others. And there are four types of gifts that are talked about with generosity. Frequently, there are only three types of gifts that are discussed, but Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche adds a fourth. Traditionally, when the three types are discussed, this fourth type is included with the other three. So they are, first of all, giving something, giving an object, giving money. The second is giving protection. The third is giving the gift of Dharma. And the fourth one is giving love and compassion. Generosity has to be the first paramita. This is the beginning of developing positive relationships with others, beginning benefiting others. It's important to recognize that love, concern for others, affection for others, these are not optional, they are necessary. We don't need any reason to offer love and affection. It is possible to offer it without putting a price on it, without expecting paybacks, without expectations and conditions. We just give our love. Ideally, we have to train to be able to do this. We have to start somewhere, but this is the direction we are going towards. Love is an infinitely renewable resource. Here is a quote by Gyalwang Karmapa. For the well-being of society and for our own personal growth as well, it is crucial that we learn to love without needing a reason or reward. Now, love, concern, and affection begin with ourselves. If we don't have these for ourselves, how can we have them for others? It's not selfish to have them for oneself. there are the two benefits of benefiting oneself and benefiting others. And with love and compassion and affection for ourselves, it will automatically benefit others, because when we come in contact with others, it's contagious. Other people can tell that you are at ease with yourself, you are comfortable with yourself, and that you're comfortable with them. I mentioned earlier about an unhealthy type of compassion, and that is where you feel that you need to show compassion to prove your own self-worth, or to have other people like you, or to prove to other people that you are a valuable person, and so forth. And these are unhealthy. These are placing expectations, wanting some type of payback, and so forth on this compassion and what you are giving to other people. So now I'm going to go into the faults and virtues of practicing generosity. And I'm emphasizing the word practicing because the Buddha Dharma, the Buddhist path, is about practice. It's not just study or being devoted to a teacher or the teachings. All the paramitas are about practice. And we need the wish to practice if we are going to practice. If we practice, qualities will arise. If we don't practice, faults will arise. Without practice, it's very difficult to progress and to understand what we need to understand. Now, the benefits of practice are clarity. If the object of generosity is an animal, we see their suffering and we try to reduce it in whatever way we can. If the object is a human being, we realize that they experience the four sufferings of birth, old age, sickness, and death, just like us. If we have compassion and kindness towards ourselves, we understand how we experience these four sufferings and can have empathy for this other person that is experiencing suffering. Prangu Rinpoche points out that there is another suffering that seems to be, I don't know if I would call it unique, but is not mentioned by the Buddha in the human realm, and that is the suffering of excessive activity and frustration that relates from that. So excessive activity is feeling that you're always in a hurry, that you never have enough time to get things done. You feel rushed. You feel like you're never finishing anything, that time is passing you by. And the frustration is a feeling that what we do isn't complete, that we've not done enough, or that it's not good enough. On Facebook, they talk about feeling like you're missing out. You have all these pictures of very happy people getting together. Starting today, there'll be lots of Father's Day pictures, and you can feel like you are missing out. And this leads to dissatisfaction. And of course, the root of all of this is this needy poverty mentality. And excessive activity springs from feeling inadequate. So being the object of generosity kind of counters this mentality and can help reduce excessive activity. And also practicing generosity, because then you feel that you're actually accomplished something if you're doing it properly. So by practicing generosity, the person that receives it has a break from their suffering, and we experience benefit from it. This is not just a theory. This is actually what's happening. And on top of that, we're accumulating merit from having engaged in an act of generosity. Prangu Rinpoche mentions that the Buddha talked about, this is in a sutra, quote, "What you give away is really yours, and what you keep is not yours," end quote. And what that means is that what we give away brings joy to the recipient, merit to us, and at death, we leave it all behind anyway, what we don't give away. We can't keep it. But what we do keep when we give things away after we die is the merit. So by keeping things out of attachment, we can develop pride, hatred, frustration, all kinds of negative things. Another quote by the Buddha is, if we give things away, then you really possess it, because of the goodness of the gift becomes inexhaustible. Whereas if you keep it, the goodness, the object becomes small and exhausts quickly. A good definition of generosity is the pure wish to give somebody something in order to help him or her. This wish is not tainted by any attachment for what you are giving. So the generosity of an action depends on our intention, our motivation of wanting to benefit another person without being attached to the object that we are offering. I remember my first teacher, my first Buddhist teacher was Rita Gross. And here is a story relating to her, that she liked antiques. And I had some, they were made out of wood, which was very unusual and very old. They're called stanchions. Nobody's going to understand this, but this barn that I have is very old, and these wood stanchions were meant to keep the cows lock on their head, and therefore the cows would stay in place when you milk them. Knowing that she liked antiques, I gave her one, and they're quite rare. And of course, she hung it outside of her house where the rain would come on it and it would deteriorate. They had been inside. And I very quickly realized that I was attached to them and thought that they were very valuable and so forth. And it was a very good lesson, because that allowed me to let go of it. So if you find that you're having some second thoughts about an act of generosity, that is a good reason to look deeply and let go. We can always learn. You might say there's a message, there's feedback. So pay attention to that. There are three types of giving, as I mentioned: giving an object, giving protection, and giving the Dharma. And Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche mentions a fourth, which is giving love and compassion and kindness. There are four faults to avoid. If we're giving an object, we want to avoid impure giving, impure intention, having a harmful intention, wanting the gift to cause pain in the recipient. And that could be giving the recipient something that is so, shall we say, valuable, that they're going to feel poor even if they get it. It's going to make you look very wealthy in front of them and make themselves look poor by comparison. Another would be expecting to be paid back or receiving some type of service for that person. Another is expecting gratitude, respect, honor, wanting to be well thought of. Here, you're not interested in helping others so much as helping yourself. Very simply, it's selfishness. And impure attitudes for offering to the three jewels are to gain status, to show off, again, to embarrass somebody, to gain popularity, to avoid being left out. After a teaching at KTD, they usually have an offering. So it would be standing in line and making an offering because you feel that you have to. All of this is egotistical. Impure objects are, for the three jewels, sacrificial animals or even humans. That's pretty obvious. But I remember this would have been over 20 years ago. After getting out of retreat, it was fine to eat meat at a Dharma activity or during a Lama visit and so forth. So the Lama was asked, well, we're going to eat this meat anyway, why not offer it first? And the answer was, no, this is not proper to offer an animal that's going to be killed to the three jewels. Other things would be stolen objects. And then, as I mentioned earlier, forcing someone to make an offering that they don't really want to part with. Objects to ordinary beings that are improper, again, are stolen objects, poison, weapons. Assisted suicide is improper. Anything that causes harm. On the other hand, there are exceptions to this that bodhisattvas can do and will do things that might seem harmful, but because of their superior vision, will reduce suffering. To make a fine point here about assisted suicide, it is not considered suicide to refuse extraordinary medical technology to keep a body alive. In my case, I've got a pacemaker. It's got roughly 7 years of battery life. And when that 7 years is up, the doctors will make a decision about whether I am a suitable recipient for a new pacemaker and battery. But I too can make a choice about whether I want to have it implanted or not, depending upon my health. So that would not be considered suicide. Unplugging a life support machine is not considered suicide. So this is important to remember. So impure recipients would be a recipient that intends to harm you with the object, or a mentally disturbed person. An improper method of giving is doing it in a crude fashion, a coarse fashion. Giving when you actually want to harm the person, but you're giving it anyway. What comes to mind there might be giving to a panhandler when you're really afraid of them and would like to get the heck out of there, but you feel cornered. Giving something that will make the person unhappy or sad would also be an impure way of giving. Pure giving involves this attitude or motivation for the offerings. So if we're making them to the three jewels, sincerity, devotion, gestures of respect. What comes to my mind here is I attended, I think it was a 3-day Vajrayogini empowerment in Chicago. It was a very elaborate Vajrayogini empowerment, the most elaborate Vajrayogini empowerment that I have ever attended. At the end, of course, there was a line for making offerings to the Rinpoche, and it was Shamarpa. This was before the split with the two Karmapas. And Shamarpa stopped receiving offerings, and he held up an old baseball hat, might have said Chicago Cubs on it or something. And he said, "This is a very good offering." Obviously, the man that offered it to him was attached to it. So giving up to the three jewels, something that you are attached to, is excellent. Pure attitudes for giving things to sentient beings would be an attitude of kindness, compassion, again, respect, and wishing to benefit them and all sentient beings. No strings attached, and the recipient can do whatever they want to with the gift. This makes it indestructible if you have this attitude. Now, a pure object for sentient beings is whatever is appropriate. I will say this, that a lot of times you just don't know what the person that's panhandling is going to do with the money. Are they going to use it for drugs? Are they going to use it for alcohol? And so on. And I tend to be a little cautious. I'd like to give to organizations that serve the needs of people that have other problems, mental health problems, and so on and so forth. But this is my own way of giving. There's a food bank in Menominee that I regularly give to. So pure offerings, this is what is appropriate and clean, fresh, good quality, offering things that are meaningful to you, rather than offering things that you don't want anymore and you really wonder why you've got it. So it's good what you are offering to others to consider it valuable, to go back to motivation. Pure motivation is done with devotion, respect, without bias, and so forth. This is for offering to the three jewels. Again, when you're giving to sentient beings, you want the respect. You want to have it without bias. Here is a quote by Khenpo Karta Rinpoche. Material giving is the first stage of training. It is not how much we give, but how well and how completely we do it. Giving the proper objects to the proper recipients with the proper attitude, words, and gestures is more important than giving something extravagant, but lacking any of these essential features. Now, bodhisattvas are able to give more than ordinary beings because they realize that their body and their possessions are more dreamlike, they're empty, they're interdependent. And finally, regretting acts of generosity is a problem, and avoid it. It's better not to give and not have regret than give and have regret. That can be a huge obstacle, regretting having a given. So now giving fearlessness. This is actually quite simple. It's giving protection from fear to another being. A person who is experiencing sickness or injured in an accident, any kind of fear. When it's related to the three jewels, this is protecting sacred objects from harm and protecting practitioners from being disturbed. Finally, protecting practitioners from disharmony. In the mundane world, this is protecting other humans from illness, fear, danger, hunger, all kinds of suffering that are present in the human realm. Things that we can do, first of all, is we can listen to a person that is suffering. A lot of times people that are suffering feel abandoned, feel alone. Nobody is even recognizing their presence. Now, this doesn't mean that you listen to a person endlessly complain. And there are people that endlessly complain, no matter how nice it is going for them. Listening to another person, spending a little time with them, sharing, could be bringing a meal over or some food over, going to a nursing home. When I first came to Buddhism, literally within about 6 months, my dear grandmother died. And it was at Thanksgiving time. And by Christmas time, I was feeling very sorry for myself. Oh, my grandmother is gone, yada, 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 yada. And I ended up doing volunteer work at a local nursing home. Once a month, I would go in for an hour and we would do a little craft class. I remember one time cut a bunch of grapevines that are growing wild here right by the building that the shrine room is in. Took them in with some ribbon for bows, and we just kind of made circular grapevine wreaths. And they were delighted to do that. They hung them up on their doors in their rooms. And after doing this for a few months, there were a lot of different projects that I would bring in for them to do. I realized I had 10 grandmothers. So this is giving protection. Just being kind, having a smile on your face. I like to thank the people at the grocery store that check me out and bag my groceries. And they frequently acknowledge that. They appreciate it. I've also been doing that with more healthcare people too. So just being kind, generous, positive, upbeat, and so forth helps protect people from fear. And then the third is giving Dharma, the gift of Dharma. And this is the highest form of generosity. And it brings the greatest benefit because it lasts. You could say you're planting seeds. So for ordinary beings, the recipient needs to be someone who is interested and has some faith and appreciation for Dharma. I read this in a book quite a few years ago by an American, and it was, "My family hates it when I'm a Buddhist. They love me when I behave like a Buddha." So a lot of times it is how you behave that's more important than what you say. You can very quickly have people's eyes glaze over when you're talking about the Dharma. So one thing that we can do is support centers, which makes the teachings available. Invite teachers to come to centers to give the teachings and programs and empowerments and so forth. This is giving the gift of Dharma to others that are interested in the Dharma. The motivation is, again, pure, without any ego. You're not looking for fame, personal gain. To sum it up, wanting to help with what you are doing. When it comes to actual teaching of the Dharma to another person, be very precise. Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche said, talk about Buddha nature, talk about compassion, loving kindness, and don't get too much more complicated than that. Don't try to explain complicated things that you don't understand. Give practical, direct use. Again, my own experience is answer in short sentences, and if they want more, they will ask a question, and if they don't want more, they will not ask a question. So be very mindful. And we're not out to convert other people. We're out to inform them. Trangu Rinpoche feels that we should not have an ordinary conversation when we're teaching Dharma. Again, we're not trying to impress other people. We're not trying to convert them. We're trying to mentally stimulate the other person, get them to think, get their curiosity going, that we're not motivated to impress, and we're trying to have them turn their mind to the Dharma. I like the idea of planting seeds that may sprout and ripen, hopefully soon, but eventually it might even be in a future lifetime. With other Sangha members, it's encouraging diligence, encouraging Sangha members practice and study more. This is from Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche. Quote, what counts is not how much we know, but how correctly we know it and how sincerely we use it to help others. And always dedicate merit after you have done whatever form of teaching, assisting in the Dharma, and so forth. And to sum it up, we want to have loving kindness, compassion underneath our actions. There are ways to increase and cultivate generosity. For an advanced being, it is the pure wisdom, the primordial wisdom, primordial awareness, which is free of the three wheels. I, that is giving, the recipient, and then the gift, free of an I, free of an other as an independent self, and free of a gift that is given. So that is the way bodhisattvas give. Now, for us, it's the power of prajna, or sherab is a Tibetan word. And this is spiritual understanding. This includes non-attachment to the gift, having no hope or expectation as a result of our actions, and of course, the right motivation. Then the dedication of merit, as I had mentioned before, is very important, that if we dedicate the merit to all beings, this increases the merit tremendously. And without doing that, the merit decreases dramatically very quickly. Since it's a paramita, this is talking about a perfection. So the perfection of generosity is a very deep understanding of emptiness and compassion. To sum this up, generosity has more to do with mentality, attitude, the way we are relating to it, than anything else. So I'll finish with another quote of Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche's. It is the feeling of readiness to do anything we can to help someone by giving him or her whatever they need.